If getting your child out of the door feels like negotiating a hostage release every single morning, I want you to know something. You're not imagining it. Maybe it's the battle over turning off the iPad for dinner, the meltdown when it's time to leave the grocery store, the Sunday night dread before school starts again, or the 45-minute standoff over wearing a certain pair of socks. If you found yourself thinking, why is every transition so hard? You are definitely not alone. In fact, transitions are one of the biggest daily challenges for so many families, especially those raising children with ADHD, anxiety, or sensory processing disorder. Parents tell us all the time, we've tried the reward charts, we've tried visual timers, we've counted down, we've practiced deep breathing, we've tried consequences. Nothing seems to stick. And here's why. What most parenting advice misses is that difficult transitions usually aren't a behavior problem. They're a nervous system problem. Once you understand what's actually happening inside your child's brain and body during a transition, everything begins to make sense, and the way you support them starts to change too. We see this every single week in our office. Parents walk in completely exhausted, describing the exact same story. Mornings end in tears, teachers have to step in during transitions at school, pickup is chaotic, bedtime becomes a 2-hour battle. Many of these children already have diagnoses like ADHD, anxiety, or sensory processing disorder. Their families have done everything they know to do. Therapy, parenting books, school accommodations, every transition strategy the internet recommends. Some things help a little, but nothing seems to create lasting change. And almost every parent eventually says the same heartbreaking words. I feel like I'm failing. You're not. You're raising a child whose nervous system has a difficult time shifting from one state to another, and no amount of better parenting can change that on its own. Research actually shows that anxiety affects nearly 4 out of every 10 children with ADHD. That's not just a coincidence. These conditions often share the same underlying neurological pattern. They're different diagnoses, but many of them involve a nervous system that's stuck in stress mode. Let's talk about why. Every transition asks your child's brain to do something incredibly complex. Their brain has to stop what it's currently focused on, hold the next task in mind, shift attention, adjust emotionally, and then move into something completely different. Researchers call this set shifting, and it relies heavily on the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for executive function. The interesting thing is that this part of the brain continues developing well into our 20s. So for children, especially those with ADHD, anxiety, or sensory challenges, these transitions require an enormous amount of neurological energy. That's why something as simple as saying, okay, it's time to put your shoes on, can feel like a much bigger request than it appears. It's not that your child doesn't want to cooperate. Their brain is simply working much harder than most people realize. Then we add in the autonomic nervous system. I like to explain it as a car. You have a gas pedal and a brake pedal. The gas pedal is your sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, and protection. The brake pedal is your parasympathetic nervous system, rest, regulation, recovery, and adaptability. Healthy nervous systems move smoothly between the two. But many of the kids we care for have spent years with the gas pedal pressed down and the brake pedal struggling to work. That's often because the vagus nerve, which plays a major role in calming the nervous system, isn't functioning as well as it should. This imbalance is called dysautonomia. When that happens, everyday changes don't feel like small inconveniences. They feel like threats. And when the brain senses a threat, meltdowns become much more likely. This is why children with ADHD, anxiety, and sensory processing disorder often look so different on paper, yet struggle with many of the same everyday challenges. A child with ADHD may feel almost physically unable to stop a preferred activity. A child with anxiety begins worrying about the transition long before it happens. A child with sensory challenges is already working overtime just to process sounds, lights, textures, and everything happening around them. Different diagnoses, very similar nervous system patterns. And that's exactly why behavior charts alone often fall short. You can't discipline a nervous system into becoming regulated. So how does the nervous system end up this way? This is where we talk about what we call the perfect storm. For many children, it begins before they're even born. Prenatal stress can influence how the nervous system develops. Then, birth may add another layer through a difficult labor, induction, forceps, vacuum extraction, or C-section. Then come the early years. Ear infections, rounds of antibiotics, falls, environmental toxins, constant stimulation from screens and our busy world. Each stressor by itself may not seem significant, but when they stack together over time, they can leave the nervous system stuck in survival mode. This is what we refer to as subluxation, neurological interference that disrupts healthy communication between the brain and the body. Now, there are absolutely things you can do at home that help. Giving your child advance notice before transitions, using predictable routines every morning, adding movement before asking them to switch activities, protecting sleep because that's when the nervous system recharges, and maybe most importantly, working on your own regulation because children naturally co-regulate with the adults around them. Those are all wonderful strategies. But if you've been doing those things consistently and your child is still struggling, that's often a sign that their nervous system needs a deeper level of support. That's exactly why we begin with neurological insight scans. We don't guess, we measure. Heart rate variability helps us understand how well the nervous system balances stress and regulation. Our neurospinal EMG shows where stress is being stored throughout the body. Thermal scans help identify patterns of autonomic nervous system dysregulation. From there, we create a personalized care plan using gentle, neurologically focused chiropractic adjustments designed to help restore communication between the brain and body, calm the overactive gas pedal, and help the nervous system become more adaptable. As that happens, families often tell us the daily flashpoints begin to soften. Mornings become easier, school drop-offs improve, bedtime isn't such a battle. Their child becomes more flexible and plans change, not because they suddenly became more obedient, but because their nervous system finally developed the capacity to adapt. So if every transition feels like an uphill battle in your home, I want you to remember this. You're not failing as a parent, your child isn't choosing to struggle, and this isn't something they simply need to grow out of. Their nervous system may simply need more support. If you're ready to understand what's really happening beneath the meltdowns and transition struggles, we'd love to help. Click the link in our bio, send us a DM, or schedule an appointment with me, Dr. Liv, and our team at Lighthouse Family Chiropractic in Mount Pleasant. Because your child doesn't need more labels, they deserve answers.